Welcome to the Young Playwrights Theater podcast. I am your host and YPT's artistic director, Farah Lawal Harris. This is episode 3 of a 4-part series commemorating 10 years of social justice theater. This is episode 3 of a 4-part series commemorating 10 years of social justice theater. The theme of this episode is LGBTQ+ identity and pride. On September 11th, 2017, YPT produced Silence is Violence, LGBTQ+ You. The performance took place at a venue formerly called the Blind Wino Southwest Arts Center in Southwest Washington, D.C. This immersive event featured 2 floors of activities for our audience members. The ground floor offered performances from LGBTQ+ career artists like Lady Dane Figueroa Adidi and Patrona Shemiulu Manibusan Tapepechul. Upstairs, an ensemble of actors, hosted by the legendary trans activist Racine Pendarvis, performed scenes and poems written by LGBTQ+ identified youth and adults. Much of the content that was performed came from writing workshops I taught at a nonprofit called Smile. Smile supports and empowers LGBTQ+ youth in the Washington, D.C. area. We were blessed to have one of the youth participants from those writing workshops, Tiara, performing her original work with the ensemble of professional actors. I'm so pleased to be reuniting in our studio 8 years later with Tiara. Tiara, how have you been?
I have been amazing, right? And quite excited to be here, as you can see. Smiles from ear to ear. So yeah, I've been really amazing. It's been beautiful.
Thank you. You look amazing. You're glowing.
Thank you. Trying to keep up with you.
So before we jump into the questions, I just want for our audience for you to just tell us your name, proper pronunciation, and your pronouns.
Awesome. So my name is Tiara Gendi, and I go by she, her pronouns.
Thank you. And like I said, you and I met through the writing workshops at Smile back in 2017. Mm-hmm. How did you first get involved with that organization?
Oh, my involvement with Smile, because I moved from Zimbabwe, down Southern Africa, to the US in 2016. And I became homeless in New York, right? So in my efforts to find stable housing, I used to reach out to different organizations, LGBT organizations that had any online presence. So it was from there, one of the organizations that partnered with Smile at the time, called Trans United Fund, one of the leaders reached out to me on social media and said, hey, we are able to help you find stable housing, but you're in New York. If you can move, come to DC. So I then moved to DC and they helped me do the needs assessment intake for the Smile House, the very first Smile House that Smile was opening. So I was able to go through that. And then I was selected to be one of the first people to occupy the transitional housing program. And then from then, also just talking through my interests of things that I wanted to do. I've always wanted to do community work and work with other young people at the time. So that's how I ended up getting a placement as well at Smile to come and help out and also do a fellowship with them and also create and engage in youth programs at the time. And I get to engage with Young Playwrights Theater.
So I remember when I met you at Smile doing the writing workshops, your story really impacted me. And I was wondering, as much as you're comfortable sharing, would you be willing to share some of your story with our listeners?
Yeah, sure. I moved from Zimbabwe, born and raised in Zimbabwe, which that just journey was not easy as a young queer person growing up in that environment that is very much anti anything LGBTQ, right? So I did go through a series of different traumas, trigger warning from just like abuse from neighbors around the area for just me being different, right? Or presenting as a very feminine boy at the time, up to all the way to sexual assault from people who was a close family member or family friend rather, right? And also knowing that in the environment that all these things are happening, there was no sort of justice I could have pursued at the time. So it was just one of those things that it was treated as a family, resolution since this person was a close family member. So just sort of growing up with that, it did not stop from just childhood, growing up when I became what is the legal age in Zimbabwe, turning 18 and wanting to create a social scene with other queer people, that still was not easy, right? Because we would be chased down streets, even walking in the towns of Zimbabwe. And that unfortunately becomes so normal to you. They're just like, oh, this is something that I expect to happen every day, right? But also through all those experiences of trauma and being attacked left, right, and center, we were still able to create our own pockets of joy with other queer people that eventually was able to find community and an organization that existed at the time. That gave birth, I think, all these incidences and experiences of abuse and being harassed and being attacked is what actually gave birth to me, the passion to me wanting to work with other people and do organizing work, and also just being able to let other people have a platform to be able to tell their stories. So that's when I started doing organizing work. At the time, I didn't even know that it was called organizing work. I thought I was just passionate about telling these stories and connecting with other people who also have other stories to tell. And we would do that. And that eventually led to me getting a job with the local LGBTQ organization in our country at the time and doing trans work specific, and also going through around the country, meeting other trans people who are in rural areas and hearing their stories, what that looks like. So I got to experience a whole range of variety of existences of trans people and just queer people in general who lived in Zimbabwe. And through that work is also what led me again another opportunity to apply to what's called the Mandela Washington Fellowship Program, which is a program that brings sub-Saharan African young leaders, as they are called at the time, to the United States to be able to do a 6 weeks engagement in whatever field that they're interested in, right? So that's how I got the opportunity to then be able to move to the US, and then leading up to us now having this conversation years later.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I didn't know about that background of organizing work.
Yep.
Is that something that you're still engaged in?
Yes, very much. I always laugh about this when people tell me like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, I don't really feel like I do any work because it just feels like it's part of my life, right? From back home in Zimbabwe, being able to just connect with other people in my community and advocating for what we need. I didn't realize that this is work that actually other people are doing and getting paid for it. But now, when I moved to the US, right? Because when you're back on the other side, back in Africa, America is sold to us as this mecca of human rights. Especially for us queer people, if you come here, you're going to be safe, you're going to do wonderful, no problems. But then after getting here, I then realized that there's a whole sort of new problems that I also now have to deal with as somebody who's new in this country, who doesn't necessarily know the systems, how they work, right? Which was a rough start for me because I went from this beautiful experience of doing this fellowship, right? The scholarship that brought me here until it ended. Now my journey starts of me getting stable in the US by myself, not knowing anybody other than friends that I've known from before. But also we haven't been in touch like that to be like, hey, I'm in the US now, so I'm going to show up at your doorstep, right? So that's what also, and I was mentioning earlier on to say that started my rough journey to the US by me being homeless in New York my very first winter and navigating all these things. But also what came out of all the struggle of being, going through housing instability was again the same thing that I was being back in Zimbabwe. Like, I need to find spaces. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's going through this. I need to find spaces with my people who are going through this so we can support each other and whatnot. And during that, I was able to meet a few other people who were also looking for the same space. So like, I'm a queer person from Nigeria. I'm a queer person from Ghana. I'm a queer person from Panama. Like, we're looking for this space for our people. It was actually at a conference that Smile had taken, as was my very first conference to attend in the US, called Creating Change. We're creating change. We're looking for all the stages of things that are happening. We're like, okay, there has to be a space for queer Africans or just Black queer migrants to talk about the experience. That space was non-existent. There was one session that spoke about the experiences of us. And so that's the room that we met in, looking for this space that's designed for us by us. But that was not the story. It was another person who, I believe, African-American, who had visited, is a professor of some sort. But he had visited Africa and got to interact with queer people in African countries and African churches. So he was holding a session where he was telling his own experience of how that was. So while we appreciated the beauty of his experience, we were also just lived for like, so what happens about us? There's nothing about us. Okay, so we need to create something, right? And from those conversations then came the idea of like, let's, we all know a lot of other people individually, but if we come together, we can actually be a big group what would it look like for us to be able to start an organization and see what we can do? Maybe let's just create social spaces so that we can isolate loneliness, remove loneliness that we experience as individuals. So we tried that. That did not work. But a couple of our folks, our original folks that we met, right, were blessed enough to then find a grant and scholarship for them to be able to start anything that they wanted. And they remember like, oh, you know what? I have a group of people that we try to start something with. How about I reach back out to them? So he reached out. It's like, hey, we're about to do this thing that we always wanted to do. Now we have an opportunity and we have some funds to do this. Are you interested? I was like, say less. I'm jumping in. Let's do this. So we're able to then start the process of creating these social spaces and then end up creating what is now called SBLMP, which is the organization that I now work for. But just to see that process of us being able to go taking through our own personal experiences and turning them into actual things, living things that now exist. So it's always been so comforting for me to say, yes, I've been doing community organizing all through this time without actually knowing that it's community organized.
There's so many gems in that as far as finding spaces and community is essential for survival. And if those spaces don't exist, you create them. Mm-hmm. That's powerful.
It really is.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Now you said BLMP. What does that stand for?
So that stands for Black LGBTQIA+ Migrant Project.
Okay.
So yeah, we're fiscally sponsored by the Transgender Law Center.
That's beautiful. Yeah. So going back to the Silence is Violence performance, what, if anything, because I know that was a long time ago, do you remember about the writing workshops that I taught at Smile?
Yes, I do. How can one forget that experience, right? Because again, like I said, it's somebody who's always had the passion to tell my own story and also creating platforms for other people to share our own stories. It's not always that we know how to put those thoughts down to paper, right? And also even just having the skill, which I still don't have up until now, on how to confidently speak, right? And recite poems. I can read out loud what I have written down, but to actually like recite in a poetic way, I still struggle with that. But also the beauty that came from the writing workshops was you were able to help us and ask us, say, what is your story? And what does that look like? And just us having these conversations, you're like, okay, put it to paper. What are you thinking? What are you experiencing? What are you feeling? And put that to paper. And then after there's just a matter of putting a structure to it in a way that feels real to you. But also I think the other thing that we don't often talk about, the transformation that happens in those writing schools, is just the ability for you to be able to go inside of yourself and be able to reflect, especially for some of us who's gone through like hard things that we struggle saying to other people, even to our intimate partners, you struggle saying it to somebody. There is some confidence you find deep within to say, I actually want to share this with people, right? Which is not an easy thing to always do. And I've been to so many other writing classes that other people have done. And it was just something that keeps bringing me back to those ones that we were doing at Smiles. Like, it was just a very safe space for people to be vulnerable with their stories. Let alone to say, you created a safe space for us to go deeper within ourselves and be vulnerable enough to put it on paper. But then to also then be bold enough to say, go on stage and be able to recite and all these things. There's something so powerful about that to me and how much it speaks of the safe space that you created and those writing classes created for so many of our youth every time. Because we used to struggle. We used to struggle. Having conversations and just connecting with other youth, we used to struggle, right? But you'd find that through the writing classes, we even started implementing some of those things to say, when we do our topics, our everyday topics that we do with the youth, we can do them in form of writing if that would encourage somebody to share, or if that makes somebody feel a little bit more comfortable to share, right? So these old, smaller tools that came out of it that also helped even our programming and how we interacted with other youth as well in the organization. Right. So, of course, I do remember.
I never knew that.
No.
My heart is bursting. I received that. That's so beautiful. I know I'm using the word beautiful a lot, probably because I'm looking at your face and you're stunning.
Thank you.
Would you mind reading your poems aloud that you wrote at that time?
Yes. All right. So I'll start with this one called What It's Like to Be a Black African Trans Woman. What it's like to be a Black African trans woman. First of all, it's being born as a gift to your parents and community. The gift that is expected to fit everyone's world, but never its own. Feeling like you were born to serve a purpose that you never chose. It's like being different is a curse that traps your soul. Like there's something choking in your breath and stabbing in your heart. If only I could be allowed to be different, I would be alive. It has become routine to wake up, live to others' expectations, go to sleep, wake up, and do it all over again. It's being visible enough to be used for everyone's benefit, yet invisible to be acknowledged for who I am. It's being pleasurable enough to be someone's private fantasy, but never worthy enough to be one's candy. It's learning to accept that loneliness becomes your friend. Depression becomes the belt you carry around with you. According to you, that defines me. A broken vessel that leaks. It's like I'm everything someone needs, but too afraid to own it and be with me. But to me, it's like being there for myself, knowing my worth, taking pride in knowing that after all is said and done, I am all I got. Then the next one is called I Too Am DC, which is a monologue. You say, I am friendly and happy for a Black trans woman. I say thank you for your insult that almost sounded like a compliment. Just because I am Black and a woman of trans experience doesn't mean that I am beat up and mad at the world. I've been on my own journey and fought my own wars. Struggles and thorns have been the ingredients to my life, but I believe I have stirred it up and made myself a good meal of confidence, endurance, and pride. I carry myself with pride and the world owes me nothing. The next time you speak to someone like me, you should know that as trans women, we go through life's punches and kicks and we overcome. Simply because we've been hurt, rejected, isolated, and stereotyped doesn't automatically mean we're at war with the world. The world owes me nothing.
The poems are deep. I remember them from back then when you read them in the workshop and thinking, wow, so much wisdom and grace and command of language. How has your perspective shifted since writing those poems, or has your perspective shifted at all?
In some ways.
Yeah?
In some ways, yes and no, right? Because if I am to revisit what it's like to be a Black African trans woman, right? And I think a lot of the things that I said from here almost leaned on me wanting or desiring the approval of the world and wanting that green light and that nod of like, you know, I see you can do this or you can be yourself. And it wasn't really rooted in, I would like to think that I've always been a confident person. I've always been confident in who I am. But also at that time and age, there was just so much approval from so many people that I really required and needed to feel validated in who I am, right? And I think what has changed over time is also just realizing that I really don't need anyone's approval to be myself. I really don't. So I've really seen, even when we started revisiting this conversation and, you know, revisiting these poems, it's like, oh, a lot of these things are still true, right? Especially when it comes to the treatment of who we are as trans women, especially as a Black trans woman from Africa. A lot of the experience I get from outside people is still pretty much the same in a way. But also what has changed, the treatment, that treatment from other people has changed because of what I changed in myself and how I'm used to move and how I used to carry myself. Because I realized that when you give so much power to somebody to approve you, for you to feel like you are who you are or how you need to move, what you don't realize, you also give them the power to deny you, right? So what then happens when they deny you? Now I'm shattered, I'm broken because somebody else disapproves when I really wanted their approval so bad. So now I don't take a chance. I don't risk the chance of me feeling unworthy or feeling small or having to rethink how I enter any space because of my transness. I'm like, nah, it's not. I have my own power. You have your own power. If we're going to occupy the same space, I respect your thing, your feelings, your thoughts about me, even if they disagree. But you also have the power to either leave and leave me in the room because I'm going to occupy this space in this room. So yeah, that has been beautiful to see that change for me.
Talk about elevation. That is pure elevation right there. And that is a lesson that could apply to anyone. Like what you said about seeking approval, that is so resonant for me. And yeah, that's a life lesson for everyone, but especially as powerful for someone with your identity, that not giving people the permission to break you. We also had the pleasure of having you perform with our ensemble when we did the performance of Silence is Violence. What was that like for you? Was it the first time you ever performed?
That was challenging for me. So it wasn't my first time performing on stage, because also growing up, a part of my childhood experiences is I grew up in the church, loved the Lord and the house of the Lord and everything. So I always loved, but I've always loved to be a creative. So I used to do a lot of acting, even in primary school back home. I used to be involved in acting at school and all of these things. But what I've always struggled with, like I said, to put things on paper and then to be able to read them in front of people. So because the beauty of acting in church and at school was we didn't used to do the script, the script written scripts. We would give each other, we would be given a context of what needs to happen, and then we would just improvise as we go and say what makes sense as long as the key points of the play come out. So us doing Silence of Violence on stage was the first time that I actually had to be like, if we're going to write something down, if as though these are your own words, now I have to get up on stage and I have to recite those things. And that's where my confidence always takes a shot, right? Because I'm super conscious of on my accent, how I pronounce certain words. So all those things now get into my head. So I'm like, oh my God, I don't have the confidence to be on stage and actually say those things. I just write them when somebody else says them, please. So I remember that was a very challenging time for me to be able to be confident enough to be on stage and be able to just be natural with it, even though I'd been on stage quite a few times. But also what I loved through that process as well, there was so much grace and patience with the people that were leading us and coaching us on stage presence and, how to pace yourself when you're doing these things. And that did allow me to take the time to ground myself and accept the challenge. To really accept and say, this is not a strong, skill that I have, but I am surrounded with skilled professionals who are here to guide me through it and coach me through it, right? So that was the thing that made me ease my mind and be able to lean into me being on stage and, reciting my poems, even though I was suffering it. So I'm like, my confidence, I don't know. I hope people don't read it. I hope they don't read it. That is coming across as, but yeah, that was the challenging part for me, but it was still a beautiful process either way.
In your opinion, what is the importance of telling personal stories?
Because it humanizes people, right? Because I think the way we move in the world, it's with so much blanketed statements, and that can go whichever way people want to look at it. There's so much blanketed statements, right? When we talk about us versus them, I think it's a natural thing for us to want to own our own identities and be able to own that when we talk about other people. But I feel we generalize quite a lot, right? If you look at the conversations that are happening right now between what a woman brings to the table versus what a man should bring to a table. What does it mean to be trans? What does it mean to be cis? What does it mean to be black? What does it mean to be white? When you take all these into consideration, the conversations that we're having, we move with so much blanket statements, right? So for people to then be able as individuals to come up and share their own personal experiences, whatever that looks like, it humanizes the person, right? I feel sometimes you also talk, especially now with everyone having a mic and a video, people just put everything out there and whatever. Sometimes whatever people hear, they run with it. if I'm to talk about my experience as a trans woman, I meet so many people who the idea of what a trans person is something that they've seen online and they've created their whole entire. I recently gave an older African mother a ride from the DMV, and she was outside begging for somebody to give her a ride. I was like, oh, you live close by. I can drop you off. So as we were driving, she kept on asking me about, so are you married? Do you have kids? I'm like, no, I don't. She's like, yeah, you should really find a good husband. You find a good husband and you have kids with. Don't be like these young kids who are out here these days. They are marrying each other. Men are marrying each other. Women are marrying each other. Some are changing into women. And I'm like, are you saying this because you realize that I'm trans or no? But during that ride, we had this conversation just about like her own experiences of she has a niece who is trans. So that's what she was saying, like, oh, this boy is now turning into a woman and one. So that conversation, when I dropped her off, I called my brother. I was like, this is what just happened. Do you think it's because she clipped my teeth? That's why she was saying that. And she's like, no, actually sometimes people talk about trans people because they don't even know what trans people look like. And for you, and you actually give me a different perspective. It's like sometimes for you, because I'm also very insecure about certain features that I have that I consider to be masculine. And my brother's like, sometimes the things that you're insecure about, when you start talking to other people and they hear your accent, their fallback is like, oh, she's just like a very strong African woman. It doesn't automatically gives them like trans that comes to your head. That's why so many people feel so comfortable when they're having conversations with you. They end up saying things that make you look like, are you saying that because you know I'm trans, or are you just saying that because you have no clue? So that's what I mean when I say people sharing their experiences, it does humanize people. Because now I always forever wondered to say, what would it have looked like if I had been able to have that conversation with that African mother before she got off my car and be like, actually, mama, all those things that you're saying, I'm actually trans and I just helped you and gave you a ride when nobody else could. Right? So that's an opportunity that I already missed to have had that conversation with her. But I really feel like the power of just us being able to tell our stories really humanizes us in whatever shape or form it looks like. It just really humanizes that person's experience. Mm-hmm. It really does.
Mm-hmm. What does it mean to be an African trans woman in 2025?
Oh my God. Thriving.
You said thriving?
Thriving, yes. Thriving. Not really. It's just really taking ownership of all my identities and knowing that whatever room I walk into, I will forever carry those identities and really taking pride into that, right? And especially lately, because I never really used to I used to struggle making other trans friends. I really used to struggle with that. But lately, when I look in my circle, I'm like, I'm actually surrounded by a lot of African trans women who are doing amazing things in life. So I'm just like, I can call this person who was a journalist here, this person who was working at Delta, I can call this person. So just like, I know quite a few African trans women who are just doing amazing in life. So for me to be part of their friendship in their sister circle and just us being able to experience life and us being able to sit and reflect back on our own individual journeys from whatever country that we are from, what we never dreamt of this life, even though we knew we wanted it since born, and to actually us being alive here in a foreign land and doing amazing things. And we can be able to let's meet, let's do this, let's take trips, let's do this. That has been fulfilling for me, right? Very fulfilling. So yeah, that's why I use the word thriving to answer that question, to say, what is it like to be a Black African trans woman in 2025, living in America? We're thriving.
Yes.
Thriving.
Yes, I love that. Thriving. How do you maintain your positive attitude?
Oh, takes a lot. Because I've been wanting to strangle some people sometimes. But no, I really find I love spending time with people. So most of the times, if you ask me, what are you doing for the weekend? I'm like, oh, I'll be at my sister's house. I'll be at my brother's house. Or we're doing a barbecue with my friends. I really love spending time with my people. That really feeds my soul. And also outside of that, I really spend a lot of time by myself. I enjoy that. I really enjoy that. You find me in the house, randomly watching something I've never watched. I can even watch something in a different language and have no subtitles on it. just the fact that I'm in the house and I can just watch something and just enjoy the quietness of the house. That always also does it for me, for sure.
What is a dream of yours for the future?
To end homelessness. To end homelessness. And I say that because one of my biggest dreams is to be able to start an initiative that helps folks get stable housing and be able to assist folks to find a long path that's stable to keeping their housing, right? Because I feel like there's so many housing assistance programs that exist that will help you temporarily. And I understand why that model also works. That's what they call transitional housing programs, right? Because you're supposed to get yourself together within a certain amount of time that's given, but also sometimes that's not always realistic, right? So what does it look like for us to be actually intentional with how we transition people out from a traditional housing program to another long-term housing situation? That's my passion. So I've paired up with another trans-masculine person who's a lovely family member to me, who was also from Zimbabwe. And we've just really been starting to support other folks who are going through housing instability and who are also just getting to the country and trying to navigate the system. So we're in the process of trying to figure out what does that look like for us to be able to do that more long-term and also on a broader scale. Because so far we've just been doing it just out of what we have. Right, from 1 bedroom apartment in Judkins, you'll find many people in there, but just hanging out. But yeah, that's my passion for sure. So I would really love to contribute and play my part in the efforts to end homelessness for sure.
I must say you're a light.
Thank you.
And a joy to be around and to know. And I'm so grateful that I've been able to stay in touch with you through all these years and that we've had certain touch points here and there. And I'm just so thrilled that you're thriving.
Thank you.
A lot of times the assumption is that young trans people are always in situations that are destitute.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of reasons for that.
Yes.
But for you to still be able to hold the truth of your story and the truth of being present and service and community is commendable. And what I wish for you is just for you to continue to thrive and be a light, and for your life to be prosperous and for you to achieve all the goals that you have set for yourself. You're here for a reason. And you've made an impact on this world deeper than you already know.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. You can also thank yourself as well, right? Because I'm not just saying this because I'm here and, we've kept in touch and gotten to know each other a little bit better over the years. But I really say this to say, even if you're to sit around with the African queer people that I hang out with, that I've assisted along the way, when we share our journeys of getting stable in this country, which is still an ongoing journey to do, I often talk about Young Playwrights Theater. I often talk about it. I often talk about what we're doing at Smile. I talk about Silence is Violence. I talk about the community that was just within that entire production and how we had different points of connection and being able to have conversations with folks. We have different experiences from you, even though a part of us, we're all within the queer community. I often talk about that, right? Because that's an experience that will forever stay with me in a way. And I continue to borrow from it, even in the work that I do today, right? At BLNP, we have a program that we do, which is a 9-month training program for Black trans folks, just to learn how to do organizing and different aspects of organizing. One of the key components of that is storytelling. And we've even gone as far as reflecting back on the history of trans organizing and how people who did organizing, trans people who did organizing before us, how were they doing it? And for us to be able to have that component within that program was borrowing from the writing classes that I went through, and how powerful it was for people to be able to have an opportunity and a chance for them to tell their stories. The impact of the work that you do continues to follow us in the life that we continue to go, the journey we will take as we go. That's a life-changing experience. It is for me, it was a life-changing experience. That's why I'm still implementing up until today.
Wow. I'm holding back tears. That moves me so much. Thank you for sharing that. And lastly, how can folks support you? What does support look like for you as far as our listeners? Is there any way that they can support you, whether it's online? Do you have any events coming up?
Oh, very good question. We have some events coming up that we're doing because we've been trying to create spaces for people to be able to hang out, especially with everything going on right now with the political environment and whatnot. Just trying to make sure that folks are supported in whatever needs that they have. So I guess folks could follow me in the meantime, so that if there's any needs that we post on our social medias, because that's how we've been able to help folks, right? If somebody's going through housing instability and they start a GoFundMe or there's something that's needed, we post through each other's socials and people were able to see those stories and be able to reach out and contribute in whatever way that they can. Or it could be as easy just like being able to pick somebody up from point A to point B if that's what they need, right? So there's no telling what those needs would look like. But I think that would be what we can do for now.
We'll be sure to include your socials in our show notes so folks can follow you. But thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. It's such a lovely experience to reconnect in person.
Yes.
And to hear about all the work that you're continuing to do.
Yes. This has been super exciting for me. I've been looking forward to this. I'm like, oh, it's happening every day. So it's been a beautiful reconnection for sure.
I appreciate you. Much love.
I appreciate you as well.
Thank you. And that concludes our third episode. This podcast was written and directed by yours truly, Farah Lawal Harris. Sound editing and production by Xperience J. Judkins. Production management by Keta Newborn. Marketing and communications from Cody Bahn. And administrative support from Tristan Willis. Original music by Jakir LaFond. Next time, we will explore the theme of mothering while Black. For more information about Young Playwrights Theater and Silence is Violence, visit www.yptdc.org. Thank you for listening.